All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, September 13th, and this class is Computer Science 1010 and ES 1060. So I'm recording from my office today because I had some technical difficulties in SM135. So I'll get a hold of our computer services people and hopefully get that taken care of before next time. So in the first little bit, I just want to take a look and show you where we are on our Moodle page. Oops, hang on. Try one more time. All right, there we go. So no. All right, so will somebody give me a thumbs up? Can you see our Moodle page? No Moodle page. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I did have it. Okay, let me try one more time. Thank you. Okay, so there we go. So here's our Moodle page. And if you don't see something that I'm talking about, since I can't see chat while I'm doing this, please let me know and I will, I'll get right back to it. So just say something if you can't see stuff. But anyway, so today we are on, it's hard to believe, but we're on our 4th week and we're going to start talking about coding in MATLAB today. So basically, what I wanted you to see, I'm going to do some specific coding today that's going to help you with your temperature conversion code that you'll be writing, that will be due next week on Friday. Even though it's not a normal class day for ES 1060, the code for the temperature conversion program will be due next Friday, which is the 22nd, I believe, of September. But I've put up a whole bunch of how to use MATLAB YouTube videos. And the ones I really like are the ones right here from Vanderbilt University. Now, I want to let you know that in this class, we are not going to be doing a lot of the matrix and array functions that MATLAB is capable of doing. So I like the Vanderbilt University YouTubes because the videos are broken down into topics. And so you can look at like the first 3 or 4 if they're interesting to you, which may be helpful. And then you can skip ahead to plotting, which is what we're going to do next. So, but that's far in the future, so don't think about that yet. But we'll be doing graphing and plots, but that will come a little bit later. So for now, we're going to we're going to just focus on the, where am I? There I am. We're gonna focus on doing a little bit of code. So what I've done here, and I'll pull this up, and I'm going to put this over on this screen, and then I'm going to share the screen with you, is I'm going to show you some of, hang on. Nope, that's Google. Oh my goodness gracious. Let me see. I want to share this screen, and how am I going to do that? Maybe I could put that over here. I wonder if it would let me do that. Let me look. Ah, here we go. Okay, so now let me know, give me a thumbs up if you would. Do you see the MATLAB programming page? Yes, thank you so much. Okay, so basically there's a few things that I want to talk to you about. This is what will occur on your screen when you are starting to write code for MATLAB. And basically, the first thing that I would like to tell you is whatever file comes up here is the only place that it's going to look. And MATLAB is a little bit funny about finding different tabs. But so I have a program that I have written, which, if you remember last time, I had talked a little bit about doing the Hello World program. And I said that I originally had, there it is. I had a, hang on. I had originally, here we go. That's one. I had originally set up just a little program, and I said, I'm going to try to make it so that you can input AM and PM, and then it will say different, it'll return a different value based on whether you say AM or PM or something different. And what I was able to accomplish doing it cold was just writing a hello world program so that no matter what you input, MATLAB would return just hello world. So what I've done here, and I'll run it and show you how this works. But basically, I've written this little program because there are two main features that I want you to see that you'll use in terms of the structure of coding in MATLAB when you start your not your hello world, but your temperature problem. So the first thing is, as you see, the first three lines of my code, 1, 2, and 3, are just comments. So any line that you start with the percent sign is just a note to yourself. And it's always important to make notes, especially if you have complicated code, because you want to remind yourself of where you're going. And sometimes you'll put in like a section break and say, this is a new section. So that way you can just run part of the code at the same time. What I've done here is not that complicated, so it won't be that sort of a problem. But basically, as I said, I've just described this program as being practice on accepting user input, which is something you'll need for your temperature conversion program, naming variables, which is another thing you'll need, and then an if, else statement. So all three of those things are going to be direct carryovers that you can use in your program for the temperature conversion. All right, so the first thing that I have done is I've input a variable, and I call that variable time, okay? And so in order to let the user input that variable, I say time equals input. That means I'm going to put something in this word time, and it's going to be this input. So I have parentheses, which is just MATLAB's way of saying this is a command, or this is a string of stuff. So I just woke up, is it AM or PM? And then I have this single quote, S single quote, followed by a semicolon. Semicolon means it's the end of a line of code. That's just MATLAB grammar, so to speak. The quote S quote or unquote says that this is a string. So what we're doing is most of the variables, MATLAB responds best to variables that are numbers. So in other words, when you input F and it's a number, for Fahrenheit is what I'm talking about, MATLAB will relate that to something that is going to do a mathematical operation on. So you'll have, for example, R is equal to F plus 459 or whatever that value is. So if you have numbers, it operates on the one way. If it's a string, it means this is just going to be some alphanumeric characters, but you're not going to be doing any math on this variable called time. Okay, so the first call that I have, the first line of code then for my user is that MATLAB will ask the user for this input. It says, I just woke up, is it AM or PM, and that's a string. Then I have three more comments, just says that inputs the time of day. It's checking for that, the time, that shouldn't say type, it should say time, being AM or PM, so that MATLAB can say good morning or good evening. So then the next is this if statement, which is another thing that you'll use. So your if statement is going to be like, if the variable that entered is F, then you calculate R, C, and K. Else if the variable is C, you calculate the other three and so forth. And then at the very end, if it's none of those things, you'll have it do some other function, which is probably invalid input. Okay. So if time is equal to AM, then I do this command, which is printf, good morning world. And once again, we've got parentheses and a semicolon, which is just MATLAB grammar.
I have a question with the else if.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, can you do two else's, or does else have to be the last one?
Else is the last one. Else means if none of these conditions were met, then this other thing happens.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Else is always, I always think of it as a data dump. You know, it's like it checks everything that you put in the if, else, if statements, and then it dumps it to else. Now, there are certain conditions where it will work, but it's not reliable. Is that helpful?
Yes.
All right, great. Good question. Very, very good question. So, because like today, we're getting into the nitty gritty, right? So anyway, if the time is equal to AM, then fprintf means that's what you display. Fprintf is a command that will allow you to just display a string or display a variable of any type or just display something. There are other ways to do this. Fprintf is an old school command. I like it because it's really efficient, but you can also use the command disp, which is DISP, does the same thing in this case, or you can say display. You can use the whole thing. So if the time that inputs is AM, the program is going to tell us good morning world. Else if it's PM, it says good evening world. And if it's something else, if you put in just XQ or 75 or something like that, the program is going to say strange answer, but hello world. So in other words, a more general. And then once again, that's all, folks, just means the program's over, and then ends the program. All right, so let's see if it works, right? So how do I do that? I have my code up here, and I touch run, and what happens? Do you see down here? It says I'm running the program Hello World Astrid Northrup, and MATLAB asks me, I just woke up, is it AM or PM? So if I type in AM, it comes back and it tells me good morning world. And now this string is here. That's just the name of the program again. Let me try AM again. I think it just does that the first time. Is good morning world. Okay, so it prints out good morning world. Now, if I want to run it again, I can just hit the run button again. Is it AM or PM? Type in PM, and it comes back and it says good evening world. And if I run it again and I say XQ, some other character string, it says strange answer, but hello world. All right. So there's a peculiarity here about a string variable, which is I have introduced AM or PM, and it's only going to look for 2 characters. That means if I put in something that's not 2, I can put in 1 character kind of because it'll assume the other one. But if I put in many characters, it'll bomb on me. So I'll show you what I mean. All right, so I ran it again. It says I just woke up. Is it AM or PM? If I put in 4, get my little cursor there, 4, strange answer, but hello world. Okay, but what if I put in something else like A, B, C, D? It doesn't know what to do with it. And it says the matrix dimensions must agree. Now, obviously, this is not a matrix, but as you learned in the onboarding, MATLAB stores everything in a matrix. Okay, so it's a from our point of view, it's kind of a nonsensical error code, but that's what we're getting at. Okay, so let me think. What else did I want to show you about this? Oh, the other thing is, let's try one other thing. Now, the way I've put this in AM or PM, as you can see right here where I define the variable time, I'm defining it in small letters. So I don't know if this is going to run if I put that in capital letters. So let's find out. If I type in AM in capital letters, it's a strange, see, it doesn't recognize it. So that's the other thing that you have here, is that it's very specific. So here's another way that we could change this is, let me do another else if. All right, I'm going to put right here, and if I'm going to say, so if time is equal to AM, then do this. All right, if on the other hand time, and it's 2 equal signs when you're doing strings, it's not really equal, it means comparing. I'm comparing my input to the input of the string, which is the variable time. But let's say here, if I say if time is equal to, let's say capital AM, let's try to make that work by fprintf. Same thing. Oops, about that. I always do that double quote. And let me do this. I'm just going to capitalize all three just to see if it actually slips through that loop correctly, or that if statement correctly. All right, so now I've changed it a little bit. This should be an else if. All right, so I have if, else if, else if. And now I've got AM for both small case, minuscule, and majuscule, large case. So what I have to do before this will run in this form is to save it. So I come up here and I just click the save, and now hopefully it will work. Let's find out. Let's do something else. Down here, if you do CLS, it'll clear that workspace. Oh, it doesn't, it's on that. CLEAR. Maybe. No, won't do it. All right. So you can just space up like that if you want to and get rid of that, clean up your workspace a little bit. Let's see what happens. If I run it, hello world, I just woke up. Is it AM or PM? I'm going to type in capital AM and see if it works. Good morning world with capitals. So I know that it did pass through, didn't it? It passed through the small AM because that would be good morning world with small letters at the beginning of each word. Passes through to this, good morning world with capital letters. So let's run it again and make sure the rest of my loop works. So I'm going to go PM, good evening world, run again. XM, strange answer, but hello world. Okay, so we've proven two different things here. We've done a little bit of MATLAB code specific information, right? So we know now that if you put a % in front of your code, that it will be just a comment for you. You can put anything behind that that you want. We know that we have to define a variable before we can accept anything else, and we know that it's input. I just woke up, AM or PM, and then it's a string, and then we showed how an if statement, if, else if, else if, else statements work. We also know that semicolons have to go at the end of those commands, and away you go. All right, so there's a couple of other things. I don't know if this is going to work, but let's see. I want to see. No, it's not type. What is it? It's class. Let's see if we have a command. Yeah, okay, we don't have enough arguments. If you have a bunch of variables, you can look, and this will be on the Vanderbilt tapes. You can see where everything is. But the only variable I have right now, if you look over here, is time, which has the value XM. But let's take one more look. We can change the value of time by saying PM. And then if you notice, not only does it run and say, good evening world, it tells me that my variable has this value of PM. Now, when you are doing your coding for the temperature conversion program, that's going to be very important, because you can look over there, and if you input an F, you'll get to see if it changed it, if it is the correct value that you input, and then it will also show you your other variables, your R, K, and C variables, and you can make sure that everything's correct, is calculated properly. All right, so I see this little program as being a little, just a little, how would I put it? A little practice program that gives you a couple of different things that you need, inputting variables, but of course we're going to be putting numeric variables, and then the if else structure, and a little bit of MATLAB code. All right, so my question for you is, what questions do you have for me at this point?
On the code, it had
Yeah.
parentheses, comma, A in parentheses. Why does that stand for PM and AM?
Let me come back to the code and see if I can help you with that. Okay, so what line? Here's the code. Tell me what line you're looking at.
The input, the first one. It's the parentheses, comma, and A in the parentheses.
I don't see that. on my
first
screen?
line, the input.
Input, time equals input?
No, it's at the very end, at the last parentheses.
Is it, you mean where it says S here? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. To me on my screen, it looks like
Okay.
an A.
Oh, okay. That, now we got it cleared up. I got it. That just means that it's a string variable, meaning it is not a numeric value. So it's not going to look for numbers 1 through 9 or decimal points. It's just going to accept whatever you put in, and understanding that you're not going to ask it to do mathematical operations. So it stands for string.
If we are doing mathematical operations, then we don't need that.
Right. That's exactly right. And in most cases, MATLAB will default to understanding that it is, let's see if I can find let's see if I have a little program over here. If there's anything where I do any input like that. Okay, let me run this one. All right, so here's, I guess we don't really have a user input function here, but do you see this second program that's called fprintf and tables?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, like here, I define a variable x, which is just a column vector, which is just a 1 by something matrix. All right, and so I just have to say x. That's it, and I just say it's a column vector here for me. Then y is the square root of x, and then I print the table. So if you look down here, here's my table, right? That's actually 3. That's the square of 9. I don't know what is going on here. Y is the square root of x. This is not correct. This is this. I don't even know what this is. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, there's something wrong with my function here, but that's beside the point. This part is correct. I don't know what I have going on up front, but my numbers are not correct. So there's something wrong with my variable layout here. I'll figure that one out later. But basically what this is saying is x is going to be this column vector, but you don't have to define it as being a string. That is correct. So let me see. I'm just looking at some of my other homeworks here. You won't have to do all of these. When you look at this and you see that there's 9 homeworks, please don't freak out, because that's not what I'm after. Okay, this was a highway calculation. Let me go ahead and run it, and I'll see if it works. Enter the highway in miles, 4, and the width of each lane in feet, 25, which is really small, and the number of lanes, 4, and then it will input the data in inches. Okay, so what this does is it calculates a volume based, if you're laying out, and like I said, you're not going to have to do this. I'm just showing you this for the variable input. But basically what it's doing is if you're building a highway and it's going to be so long and so wide and you need so much material on top of whatever the ground is, okay, it's how much volume of that material you're going to need. So this is asphalt. It's a volumetric calculation for asphalt. So basically it's the length times the width times the height. All right, so if you look at the variables, length, width, a number of lanes, because you put in that, and then the depth. All right, so basically what it's saying is L is an input and you ask it for this variable, and then width is an input, the number of lanes is an input, and the depth is an input. So then the first thing you have to do is you have to check for bad volume, right? Because in other words, none of those things can be equal to 0 or be less than 0. So it's saying if L is less than 0 or W is this is a kind of an efficient statement for doing stuff. If L is less than 0 or W, if any of them are less than 0, then you have to display invalid, right? But basically the volume is going to be these things multiplied together, but they're in different units: miles, feet, lanes, inches. So you have to do a conversion factor, which is 27, 12, and 5,280. But so volume is equal to this. All right. So in other words, all of these are numeric variables, and volume is a numeric variable. So you do not have to define them. It just sort of MATLAB assumes if you put it in that way, it actually assumes it's a matrix, but that it's a 1 by 1 matrix. So you don't have to define the variable that way. Does that answer your question, Michaela?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, you bet. You bet. So the other thing I was going to tell you, anyway, there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on here, but that's okay. We could input some percentages and so forth, and it's going to check for bad values, but that gives you the idea about data input or about variable definition. When you start working with MATLAB, it's going to assume a folder here for you. Now, for me as a faculty member, my default folder is my H drive. And so I built on my H drive. As you can see, I built a lot of subfolders, but I keep all of the programs that I have in COSC 1010. So the reason I'm telling you this is because you may have trouble finding your program if you don't index it properly. If you have a student drive and you want to keep everything in the root drive of your student drive, that's fine, but just know where it is, because it doesn't necessarily change as quickly as you might think it would. So what it will tell you is, let me see if I can find that message. This folder is not on your MATLAB path. All right. So you double click to make your current folder or add the path. All right. So in other words, just make sure that because we're all working on virtual machines, it looks like we're working on a hard drive, but we're not. Everything's virtual. So it has to find that folder and it has to index it properly. So make sure that you know where your stuff is going. Just a little tip, hard-won little tip. All right. So let me get out of this program. I think I'm going to have to, let's see, there we go. Let me see. All right, so let me do something here if it'll let me do this. No, I don't want to do that. I want to get somewhere else, but I have to get back to my COSC, there we are. All right. And so now I should get that folder, which is up here. There we go. COSC and select folder. All right. It really wants to do that one. There we go. All right. So the other, and it's going to make me stay in here unless I get rid of it, but there's but basically those are just some ideas I think that are going to help you get started with your coding. So let's take a look then at our Moodle page. I'm going to stop this share and I'm going to come over here to our computer science Moodle page and let's look here. All right. So you should be able to see this. So like I said, when I've put up these videos for you, introductory video to MATLAB and all so forth, you may find these more useful. The most useful set I have that for me would be selecting the Vanderbilt videos that you want. But I put these up because they're quite short and they can get you started if you have any problems. Now, as you recall, this Friday, we're going to have a software development degree program lecture, which I will also record and put on our Moodle page. But if you're able to join us on Friday by Zoom, that would be fantastic. But as you're getting started, you can use these as resources. You're not required to watch any or all of them. They're just there for your benefit to help you. And some of them are really, really good. So you'll be able to help that out. So Friday, we have software development. There will not be a lecture on Monday, September 18th. But what's going to happen is I'm trying to decide. On Wednesday of next week, which would be September 20th, I will be here and I'll lecture a little bit more about building code, but you're ready to get started coding this program in MATLAB right now. So I'll put a tab here that says Wednesday, September 20th. Maybe it will say present initial draft of MATLAB code or something like that. So it doesn't have to be working entirely by then, but I'd like to see that you've made some progress on doing that code. So, and then probably, I don't know that Friday, sometime this week, the final code will be due. So after you create the initial code, if you have any trouble, the chances of it working 100% the first time you write any code, that it usually just doesn't happen. Or at least for me, with writing your pseudocode and for the Computer Science 1010 people flowcharting, I think you will be farther ahead than you would be if you just started coding cold. But you may end up with some problems like for me, I always do a double quote instead of a single quote, and it always comes back and says there's an invalid statement. Sometimes the error messages are helpful. Sometimes they're just like bizarre, like where it told us that you had the improper size matrix. If you're inputting more than 2 numbers or 2 letters instead of AM or PM, if you put in XQYZ, it tells you improperly sized matrix. I don't necessarily think that's really helpful to the user. It's very descriptive of what MATLAB is not able to do with it, but it's more difficult for us to understand what that means. But you will get messages that will be helpful to you. The other thing is when you bring up MATLAB and you take a look at the workspace that they create, there is a really nice help feature. So if you go to the upper right, let me find it here for you. If you go to the upper right of that screen where it says search documentation, you can generally get some really good information for specific questions. It's not going to step you through anything the way that the Vanderbilt lectures will. However, if you have like, I don't really know how to define this as a string variable, you can say define string variable and it will come up. The other thing I wanted to show you on this program, now this was after I had run something about that XY program, the print tables. You can see here that in my workspace, I still have time as PM from the last program, but now X and Y are defined as those double programs. If I were to do a different program and have a variable called X, it would rewrite X. So sometimes you want to do something a little bit more descriptive. Instead of calling a variable X, you might want to call it base number. Okay. And also when you define variables in MATLAB, you cannot use spaces. You can use, the only character you can use is the underscore. So you could call it base underscore value or something like that. But if you're coding and you have a lot of variables, sometimes I find it to be really useful to keep my variable names somewhat descriptive. So for example, here, the variable I defined here was called time. X and Y are sort of, I don't know, not very creative and not very helpful when you're trying to debug stuff. So, all right, do you guys have any other questions for me today? All right, then, well, I will update our Moodle page to show that you'll have a draft of your program, the temperature conversion program, by maybe next Wednesday, a week from today. And then we'll talk a little bit more about that in class on Wednesday. We don't want to have class Monday. And then the following week, we'll have the program be due, but we're going to have a lot of time to work between now and then on our program. So, all right, everybody. Well, that's it for today. I'm going to stop recording, and then you can log off if you have anything you want to talk about. I'll stay on. I'll stay in the Zoom room for a little bit. So have a wonderful day, and you'll see everything posted really soon.